In today's video, I wanted to go through the side quest Repentance featured in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Repentance is quite the interesting one, not necessarily due to its length nor the sustenance of the quest. The former is fairly short and the latter is fairly simple. I find it interesting because of how the quest is discovered as well as the overall premise of said plot. Repentance is a hidden quest. Technically, most side quests involve some kind of effort to learn of. However, this one is among a select few that I'd be willing to bet most casual Skyrim players have missed. I'm certainly not projecting or anything of the sorts. Plus, it discusses a topic that I've personally always been interested in, the creation of Hagravens. Honestly, I consider this to be one of Skyrim's many campfire stories. It's a great tale to listen to and talk about. So, in this video, I'm going to be playing through the quest, listening to the dialogue, detailing my experiences, discussing the plot, and in the end, I'll go over the lore, theories, and possible explanations. Information in this video is brought to you by the game itself and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. There are technically two ways to begin Repentance. Really, one might be considered the more traditional starting point, while the other is more for the avid adventurer. You can easily skip over the traditional method, but there's a good chance that by heading over to the city of Riften, you might have overheard the guards discussing some sensitive matters. Either by sheer luck or relentless pestering, eventually the guards will mention something about Darklight Tower.
There's a foul presence coming from Darklight Tower, southwest of the city. Some say the place is home to necromancers.
That snippet of information will be enough to get Darklight Tower marked on the Dragonborn's map. Appearing at Skyrim, the tower is located just east of Largashbur and directly south of Faldar's Tooth. The journey over there has a chance of being eventful. This patch of the province is home to bears, frostbite spiders, and other ferocious creatures that might stop you in your tracks. However, as for the tower itself, everything seems calm. From the outside looking in, it appears as though there isn't much happening in Darklight. There's nothing nor no one roaming the exterior, making it appear more friendly than it actually is. However, heading inside, the real story makes itself known to the player. From the entrance, you can hear a commotion going on behind closed doors. Pushing through to the other side, you can see two mages engaged in a fight to the death. One of them comes out on top and then turns her attention towards the player.
By the gods, I know this looks bad. Let me explain. I didn't want to, but she attacked to try and keep me from leaving. I can't be a part of this place anymore. The things we do here, evil, evil things. No more! We were supposed to find a sacrifice. Human sacrifice. I told her I couldn't do it and she attacked. I've done horrible things living here, but never taken an innocent life. I couldn't just find some person for them to kill. The initiation. My mother is going to become one of those things. I can't be a part of that. Gods, I can't run away from this. I have to stop her. I'm going up there to stop her. This cycle must end. I don't know what brought you here, but I could use your help if you're willing. Good. Follow me. We have to fight our way up. I don't think anyone else here is about to have a change of heart.
Illia talks about how her mother is going to become one of those things, and that's why she and the other hags need to find a human sacrifice. While it's not explicitly stated what those things are, after a little bit of dungeon crawling, we get a pretty good idea. From here, the quest Repentance officially begins. It's essentially the Dragonborn and the witch pushing to the top of Darklight Tower. Along the way, the two of you encounter enemies like frostbite spiders, witches, hags, and even a troll. Interestingly, the hags are level to the player, but the witches sit at level 4, so they're definitely the easier foe to beat. Like most dungeons, this one contains its fair share of loot. There are chests hidden in and around the space, and because there are sorcerers occupying the area, there are quite a few soul gems, potions, and poisons for the taking. While embarking on the crawl, Illia doesn't say much to the player. Really, she mostly just acts as a follower, or more so a leader, for the raid on Darklight.
Hagraven up ahead. Pull the lever when you're ready and we'll take her.
Well, I blatantly said it in the beginning and then hinted at it a little later. But the last category of enemies for the tower are Hagravens. Depending on your level, these could be the most difficult enemies of Darklight. They stay at level 20, cast deadly fire spells, and swipe with their razor-sharp claws. Be sure to read the skill book 2920 Sun's Dawn version 2, and then from there it's on to the next zone of the dungeon, Darklight Chambers. Honestly, Hagravens are a scarce topic in the Elder Scrolls V. They're not the most abundant enemy, and their origins are quite mysterious. They can usually be found at Forsworn encampments, but if you ask me, these don't look like Reachmen. In fact, we're far from that region.
Locked. Damn! One of the hags nearby will have the key. You'll have to take it from here. I'll keep watch here. Unless you can pick the lock.
For my character, a master lock is just barely out of touch. I think a lot of other players might share that sentiment. Plus, by exploring for the key, you get a little more adventure out of the story. The key is on a Hagraven in the next chamber over. If you plan out the attack, it shouldn't be too tricky to deal with her and the witch at the same time. Now, while back in Riften, the guard said that there were necromancers here. I guess he wasn't technically wrong, but I don't know that I would classify these enemies as necromancers. The game itself didn't even do that. Plus, if you look around, there's a sparse amount of dead human bodies in the tower, let alone just bodies. Don't get me wrong, there are some, but nowhere near as many as you'd see in a classic necromancer dungeon. So that begs the question, for these other Hagravens, were they transformed at Darklight? We now know that they need a human sacrifice to become these foul creatures. So, did the witches here kidnap people, bring them to the tower to kill them, and that's how they got labeled as necromancers? Is there something special about Darklight that allows for the ritual to happen, or is this coven just bent on becoming Hagravens? Well, those questions might be answered real soon.
All right. Mother is just outside this door. I have a plan. I'll present you as the sacrifice. Just play along. While Mother begins the ritual, I'll strike. Then together we can kill her. I've thought this through, and it's the only way. She's too far gone, too corrupted by the hags. At least in death, she can be free again. Enough. Let's go.
Following Illia, she and the Dragonborn exit the tower and end up at the top of Darklight.
Greetings, Mother.
Daughter, who is this you have brought me?
I've found a willing subject for you. Payment has already been discussed, of course.
Splendid. Please take a seat on the chair behind me, would you?
Illia's mother is named Sylvia. Sylvia has clearly set up everything that she needs, as there's a lot of specific items and instruments in the space. She asks the Dragonborn to sit in between two pillars with torches, right across from a ceremonial bowl that contains the head of a skeever.
I'll just prepare the subject now.
I can't let you do this, Mother. You have to die now.
Let's hear it.
A very direct approach to Sylvia's downfall. From here, Illia launches her attack and Sylvia takes up arms. Sylvia is a radiant level which can range from 7 all the way to 51. She dons Necromancer's robes, has a level dagger, is able to use a conjuration spell, and most intriguing of all, she carries a special staff. This staff ends up becoming the Dragonborn's prize, and I think most players would find it more than worthy. Defeating the Imperial, the quest Repentance officially comes to a close. The death of Sylvia and every other witch, hag, and hagraven in the tower puts it free and clear of necromancy and the dark arts. As for the staff, it's called the Staff of Hag's Wrath. When sprayed on the ground, it creates a lasting wall of fire that deals 50 points of fire damage for 50 seconds. I'll further explain the staff in just a bit, but for now, it's off to the final dialogue with Illia.
Don't be sorry for me. If I would have known it would come to this... Mother... Keep Mother's staff. Think of it as payment. I want to leave everything from this cursed place behind. Goodbye. And thank you.
Chatting with Illia once more, the Dragonborn now has the option to make her a follower. I think it's fair to say that she's more than proven her mettle. She's a powerful destruction mage who can hold her own. Looking around the top of the tower, there are nearby items that might help to paint a picture for this ritual. I'll discuss those shortly, but for the remainder of the loot, there's the Destruction Skill Book, Horror of Castle Zur, as well as poisons and a boss level chest. From the top of Darklight, the player is free to head out into their next adventure. Like I said, this is a short one, likely just meant as a narrative to accompany an otherwise standard dungeon crawl. However, the magic is in finding this side quest organically and piecing together the lore for yourself. It's about the mystery and wonder that's been poured into Skyrim. At every twist and turn, nook and cranny, there's always some story to tell, and while perhaps minuscule to the player, this is one that's had major repercussions for some of Skyrim's NPCs. Now, real quick, let's discuss the staff. At first, I wasn't quite sure how to use the staff of Hag's Wrath. I started blasting enemies directly and noticed that it did a decent job at getting their health down. After all, 50 points of fire damage is nothing to scoff at. However, I soon understood what that description was getting at. The staff is best used to light the battlefield ablaze. Wherever you think most of your fighting is going to take place, blast the floor with the staff and watch your enemies burn to a crisp. They'll take constant damage from the flames while you'll come out unscathed, from said elemental damage that is. If you have some means of incapacitating an enemy or staggering them, that'll help greatly to keep them locked down in the fire. Honestly, it's an incredibly useful staff with a unique take on fire damage, and it's definitely one that's been added to my weapons rotation. Alright, as for the story of Repentance, most of it was laid out plain. Illia couldn't go through with finding a human to sacrifice for her mother's transformation into a Hagraven. She tried to leave, and that's when the hags and witches tried to stop her. After the Dragonborn stumbled onto the scene, Illia got a change of heart and decided to put an end to the horrors of Darklight Tower once and for all. While she intended to just kill her mother, Sylvia, it ended up being a complete massacre with the witches, hags, and Hagravens all losing their lives too. Like I said, it was laid out fairly plain. However, there are other small details of the story that are worthy of discussing. For example, Illia, her mother, and the other witches and hags were a part of a coven that served the Hagravens. It sounds like the hierarchy goes Hagravens, hags, and then witches. I wonder how long Illia and Sylvia were a part of the coven for. At first I assumed that they were somewhat newer to the group, simply because of Illia's disdain for their practices, but now I'm not so sure. Maybe because only now that Illia was chosen by her mother to find a sacrifice, a novel responsibility for the Imperial, she finally threw in the towel and said enough was enough. She didn't want to put up with the grotesque rituals or foul creatures anymore, and she couldn't bear the idea of her mother becoming one of them. Speaking of which, for Sylvia, she was actually donning necromancer's robes. Earlier I mentioned that there wasn't a concrete necromancer in sight, but I guess Sylvia disproves that. While the UESP doesn't necessarily classify her as a necromancer, I'd say that her garb and spellbook seal the deal. Perhaps there have been other necromancers at the tower, and those are the ones who turned into the Hagravens. Maybe at one point in time, there were more necromancers here and for one reason or another, they left or were killed. Or perhaps the guard's dialogue was a bit of a foreshadow as to what/who the final showdown of Darklight Tower would be with. Honestly, could be for a multitude of reasons. Then the final thing to discuss for Repentance is the ritual part. Typically, Hagravens are found among the Forsworn. This isn't always the case, but usually when you come across one of these horrifying creatures, they're out in the Reach. This could be due to the Reachmen's affinity for magic, nature, and power. They live a more primitive lifestyle, so the goal might be to ascend to the most ferocious and strongest of beings. For spellcasters, particularly the women, those are Hagravens, and for the melee fighters, those are Briarhearts. In any case, it's just interesting to see a Hagraven farm all the way out in the Rift. But I suppose these entities aren't limited to the Forsworn and are more so just steeped in local folklore. Plus, there are covens all over Skyrim that have Hagravens as their leaders. So we know that the ritual requires a human sacrifice. Illia said that the player was a willing subject, but something tells me that consent isn't a huge factor for the ritual. From there, the Dragonborn had to sit in a chair. This was in between two makeshift pillars that had torches on them. As Sylvia walked over, she was about to recite some kind of incantation. Best guess is that after doing so, the torches get ignited, either by her or the spell, and then the bowl in front of her starts to fill up with the ingredients. That mixing bowl probably plays a huge role in the transformation, and a guess is that, in some way, the sacrifice's proximity to said bowl matters. If the subject wanders off or flees, it probably disrupts the connection/spell. That's likely why there's a seat and why a willing subject will make the whole process a lot easier. As it stands, this bowl started off with a skeever's head inside of it. although I have seen these kinds of bowls with goat heads and even human heads in them, so I wonder if the specific creature actually matters. Then after that, the ingredients on the nearby table are actually somewhat simple. There's a skeever separated into two. I usually do see multiple skulls in the bowl when I stumble onto a Hagraven site, along with an iron dagger, a wooden bowl, 2 samples of Death Bell, a black soul gem, frost miriam, horror of Castle Zur, a weak magic of poison, and a potent poison. Hanging in the nearby hut are some samples of taproot, a staple for most Hagravens. Again, best guesses are that 1, this ritual requires more than one sacrifice. There probably needs to be a human as well as some animal of some kind, hence the skeevers. The black soul gem indicates to me that this process requires the Hagraven to take more than the sacrifice's life. It also requires their soul, or maybe it just requires a black soul. It's hard to tell. What happens with said filled soul gem afterwards though is unknown. Maybe that gets tossed into the mixing bowl, or perhaps there's some other way the hag interacts with it. As for the ingredients, those are quite interesting. Death Bell can damage health, ravage stamina, slow, and provide a weakness to poison. Frost Miriam has some benefits like resisting frost and fortifying sneak, but it also ravages magicka and damages stamina regen. Maybe these herbs are being crushed and added to the wooden bowl, which then maybe gets tossed in with the mixing bowl because the body needs to undergo the physical transformation. Perhaps in order to turn from a human into a Hagraven, various poisons and dangerous herbs need to be ingested by the hag. Maybe combined with the rest of the ritual, it completes the transformation. Or perhaps these are just necessary ingredients for the mixing bowl. There are also the 2 nearby poisons, which are either part of the ritual as a whole, or maybe those were the start of some kind of alchemical process that's needed for the ritual. Plus, there's the horror of Castle Zur, a destruction skill book. Is this necessary for becoming a Hagraven? Extra knowledge on powerful fire spells? Or is this just there for the player's convenience? Honestly, at this point, all we can really do is speculate. At some point during the ritual, the sacrifice needs to be, well, sacrificed, and that could be what the iron dagger was for. This could either be a simple kill, or perhaps some body part needs to be offered up to the mixing bowl. Speaking of which, while Sylvia did not have much on her person, the one thing she did have was a second iron dagger. Whether this was for combat or lore reasons is unknown though. In the end, it's really tricky to assume what goes into the ritual for turning into a Hagraven. There are so many variables and mysteries that we still don't have answers for. Repentance got us a step closer with the human sacrifice, torches, pillars, and decent sized bowl placed in front of the sacrifice. But beyond that, it's still hard to paint the picture. What's a red herring and what's actually used for the ritual? All we really know is that turning into a Hagraven is a choice. It involves the hag giving themselves up to who knows what, both physically and magically. While we know that necromancers can become them, we don't know if it's mutually exclusive to that class of spellcasters. We also know that the transformation can be done in any part of Skyrim, as there are Hagravens in the Rift and in the Reach, 2 separate areas of the province. What we don't know is what that exact process is like, if it's reversible, which higher power is granting said gift/curse, and what their goals are after becoming a Hagraven. Perhaps those will be questions that get answered in the Elder Scrolls 6. I'd love to hear your thoughts of Repentance down below, and until next time, keep on adventuring.